Hi, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live chat. Today, what we're going to be doing is taking a look back at the grain shed, looking at different photos and angles. Some of you would have seen before, but maybe for others, it's new to them. And we're primarily looking for potential bullet holes, okay? We briefly touched upon it in a past video, but there was still a level of uncertainty, right? It seems as if in recent time with the breaking news, what we've heard of, and that video footage of Brenner cleaning a gun, you could tie one thing with another, right? So that's what we're gonna do. We're doing under the basis that Dylan was shot. So not saying 100% definite, but it seems more than likely now. If you do want to disagree, of course, feel free to leave your thoughts down below. But yeah, that's what we're going to be doing today, looking at a range of different photos, looking up close. In addition, I'm going to be taking a look at a couple of new articles, which are very recent. I think it's talking about maybe what Candice Cooley Justin have said from that East Idaho news channel. But I want to see if the other news articles are still consistent, right? It's important we do it. It's important that we nail it on the head as soon as possible, so then we're not having to look back in the past, right, down the line. So if there's any inconsistencies, if there's any misinformation, etc., what we'll also do is check some of the comments out from my previous video I did. And speaking of which, if you haven't already watched it, make sure to do so. Make sure to check out my last video on Dylan Rounds, as it talks about the latest information regarding what Candice Cooley and Justin have said, some very important stuff regarding Brenner as well, and in addition, a complete timeline of timestamps of both Dylan's whereabouts and his phone when it departed him on the day 28th of May 2022. Make sure to check it out. I'll provide a link down below in the pinned comment section, okay? And just a little bit more on about last night's video. Arguably reached a new personal record in terms of people watching live. In the past, the odd occasion, it got up to about 101, 102 people watching, but after months and months of that not happening, last night there was about 106 people watching live, which was kind of a surprise. But I guess because of the focus, the topic, the talking points, you know, I guess more people were interested in that. And hopefully we can continue that with today's video, of course, trying to tie it in, move on with a constant flow, so it's kind of easy to follow along, right? And, you know, as we do go along in this video, feel free to share your thoughts, opinions, reactions in the live chat and talk about some other stuff as well. Still practical to maintain a little bit of focus, right, as we do go through it, because there are some key talking points that do come out of the chat, which is all good. As for last night, yeah, we did have some key people popping in. Bob popped back up again. Shout out to Bob Farrell for his super chats as well. I think he had a few issues with connecting or something, but I saw his comments and so did other people, so that's all good, under control. Shack Lady popped in as well. I think she popped in later into the video because she didn't quite understand that I covered a range of stuff earlier on in the video, but I'm sure she checked back in on the video from the beginning later on and caught up with it, up to speed, okay? So yeah, I think what we'll do in the appropriate order, whilst we allow people to join on in, so everyone's here all at once, we'll check the comments out of the last video, because there are some questions and there is a little bit of confusion regarding the first burial site. I will be able to explain and answer that, and if people really need redirecting to even more official documents, then you know that can be done as well if you just check couple of videos back on my channel. Okay, so it's all under control. Let's head on over now to the comments. And I think what we'll do as well, whilst we're on YouTube, so before I forget, there was a viewer request for me to, I guess, kind of like assess, analyze what one of the channels had said about the Dylan Brown's case. I think they were just giving like an overall update summary of the case, but I think the viewer wanted me to just give my opinion on it, see if there's any inconsistencies, any misinformation, any additional info I've never heard of before. So we can do that as well. I think it's by bedtime stories, bedtime crime stories. You might have seen or heard of them before. I think they've got like a black profile picture with white text on. It might re-jog your memory once we get onto it. But first, let's just check out my previous comments and see if I can answer anything. Right, so we'll set it from the newest comment, start from the bottom, work our way up. So a few of these comments I think may have been before the live premiere. Some people acknowledging great news. What does Patsy say? Patsy Rainwater, the gun Brenner used, was it Dylan's gun? Well, first of all, the key question is it for definite that a gun was used in the murder of Dylan Rounds? Has that been 100% confirmed? Not really, but it is edging more towards the possibility that that's what was used, a gun, right? Second question, was it Dylan's gun? I mean, not really confirmed, though, kind of a coincidence if you think about it, that Dylan's gun went missing, it was returned back to his trailer, and it was cleaned off prints. What happened before that? Well, on the 28th, Brenner, in that video recording from Dylan's phone, Brenner cleaning a gun. You could say there's a link there, maybe Brenner was cleaning Dylan's gun at that time, or Brenner was cleaning another gun, his. It's just kind of like a coincidence, isn't it? How gun returns back cleaned. There's a video earlier of Brenner cleaning a gun. But I think what you got to understand is, to an extent, the time difference. 28th of May and then very early June. Are they of the same item or not? I mean, really what would give it away is if we were able to see the footage or a photo of the gun Brenner had, what he was cleaning. Because, what model, what type of gun? Shotgun, handgun, pistol, handgun, rifle, not quite sure of. But definitely a theme emerging, the use of firearms, right? There we go, we've got Bob. I'm in chat but can't see any of my chats. This sucks. I will try and find out why I get booted out of chat. This is really a pain in the ass. So that's unfortunate for Bob. I'm not sure, I've not experienced that myself, not really seen anyone else. Bob, have you experienced anything like this before on other channels, like the Shack Lady? Just let me know your thoughts. I don't know why it does happen. It is annoying. No, I just can't recall it happening to me, even when I've watched other videos. So, what's this? Patsy, did Brenner say where Dylan at? Well, no, he hasn't revealed the location yet, but he said he would, though Candice Cooley and Justin don't really want to make a deal with him. They'd rather find Dylan themselves. And that runs the risk of it backfiring, right? If they're unsuccessful and they have to go back to Brenner asking, maybe by then Brenner will not say anything because he's like, well, you've already declined my offer the first time. That's disrespectful. I'm not going to allow it again. And then goes awkward. There's that risk. And if not that, depending the length of time, Brenner's health as well. You got to take that into mind. What happens if he passes away? You don't really get justice, and you don't get the location of where Dylan is at. Sure, if that came to that conclusion, you could say it's a big disaster. But there probably still is a possibility that you could find Dylan, though probably much later on. If you want to be time efficient, I guess you might have to do something you don't really want to do, just for the sake of Dylan, right? But, interesting polls last night, of course. You saw the voting with them, the data. Some interesting, responses. Shack Lady said, too many polls, too many polls. Oh, Shack Lady. Said by the one who's got a pole shoved under her bed. But don't worry, Shack Lady. If you thought that was too many polls, just revert back to one of my older videos, which I did, which had so many polls, I couldn't keep up with them myself. And I was the one creating them. I'm sure some people in the chat, like Christy, Linda, and maybe Joseph, will remember. It was a bit chaotic. That's why I've kind of scaled back on the polls. You get me? But yeah. Patsy, did a video show Brenner shooting Dylan? Well, from what I've heard of, no, not at all. Is there additional footage, other videos out there, maybe on Dylan's phone, which may show it? Well, from what I've heard of, Candice Cooley said there is no additional footage, okay? Unless, for whatever reason, the police does have some, but they've not shared it with Candice Cooley Justin, okay? Seth 101, so sad, a young life snuffed out by a piece of shit like Brenner. So shout out to Seth, I believe a new viewer popping in, okay? Oh, Bob again. So I think this was Bob's comment, I believe, which might have been in the super chat, possibly. Just very quickly, just randomly thinking of it. Did someone say that super chats don't work, or one of them does? Super stickers, but super chat doesn't work. You might be wondering what's the difference between the two. Well, a super sticker is where you can just send like an emoji, an animated emoji badge thing in a as for support to the channel. And then a super chat is like the same thing, sharing, giving support, but you can add a little message on. And that's like what Bob did last night, okay? You can also type in like questions as well. But I just remember someone previously saying it didn't work, one of the two, super sticker or super chat. Was it Weedleby? I can't remember, but maybe it was just a glitch or an error at the time, because it seemed to work last night when Bob did his. So it should be okay. But just read it out once again, what Bob has to say. Candice and Justin, please make the deal with Jim Brenner. Please don't wait any longer. If Jim Brenner should have a heart attack and dies, you're done. Do it for your son Dylan. No one will say a word to you for making a deal. Bring him home for your family and his YouTubers. Please. Yeah, I understand it. I mean, if you think about it, Candice Cooley saying she didn't want the case to drag out this long, and for charges too. It's been, in the making. It's taken some time. It's like, well, if that's the case, then why do you want it to drag out any longer? Don't you want it over and done with some form of success, right? I mean, I don't know, like, the only other thing I can think of, and I don't know if Candice Cooley and Justin are thinking this as well, but is there a possibility that Brenner is saying that he will reveal the location, but it turns out to be a wild goose chase? You've seen it in the past with some serial killers, where they said, oh yeah, I'll reveal the location of where I put that person. And then they give a false location. So the family go down there with hopes up, also nervous, and a little bit uncomfortable. They dig it up and realise nothing's there, and it was the other person playing around, playing mind games. Is Brenner capable of doing that? Possibly. Candice Cooley has referred to Brenner as cold, I guess, in his presence, his facial expressions, maybe his attitude as well. So maybe he could start playing around, messing about, though the actual deal made probably won't go through if it turned out to be a lie. But in terms of getting people's hopes up, having the last bit of control you have, that would be the case. Lying, right? Now we've got a next comment by Exploring Abandoned Mines and Unusual Places. Shout out to Frank. He's been around for some time now, both on his own channel, but also like watching some of my videos from time to time, including the Kenny Veach case and M Cave mystery. So it's good of Frank to pop in here and there. Just read what he says. Wow, this is breaking news. Glad to hear someone was charged with Dylan's murder. I honestly thought this case would go unsolved and would fade away as a result. Lots of good sleuths out there on this channel. So, yeah, I mean, I would say in my opinion, this case is probably 50% complete. Do other people agree? Let's do a poll right now. I don't know what type of percentages I'll type in, but yeah. How far do you think progress has been made into the Dylan Rounds case? Do you think it's 50% complete, 25% complete, nowhere near finished? Just like rough options to vote from. And just let me know what you think, okay? Mary QC, shout out to Mary. I think they're a new viewer. Says, does anyone think Brenner took Dylan into his place after he was shot, but maybe he didn't die? Could Dylan have taken the video before passing in that man's sty? Sty? What's sty? Okay. Just see the responses. Louise Harry. I wonder where Dylan was shot and how many times. He might not have died straight away. Right. Colt. Good name. You're right. Gunshots are strange. Some people will fall over dead from the exact same wound. Another person might survive for hours. I think this is quite possible. It might also apply to the build of an individual. You could get shot in the same area, but might just be a few centimetres to the left or right, which can make the overall difference to whether you survive or not, whether you die immediately or in a few hours' time. And if treated in that period, you could be saved. So yeah, the methods, the style, the angle and all that, we could try and discuss a bit later on in this video. Just to briefly acknowledge, if you are suddenly joining right now, welcome. We're just going through a couple of comments, just answering questions, and then proceeding on with some news articles to clear up that and to check for consistency, and then following on with the key part, looking through images at one of the key areas, the grain shed where Dylan was supposedly taken out, and seeing if there's any proof of ballistics, bullet holes. Okay? Right. So this bit here about could Brenner have taken Dylan into his own trailer? I mean, it's a possibility, but what it would mean is Brenner would have had to have cleaned the inside of his trailer, and I've not really heard any reports of that, only about Kurt, which was external, people saying he bleached his trailer. So we're not really linking that here, though. Yeah, because if you're dragging Dylan around, you drag him into your trailer, you probably get blood stains on the ground, right? And will Brenner be cleaning all that up? I just don't think so, right? If the police were able to retrieve Brenner's shirt with blood on, then Brenner didn't really do a good job disposing of it, did he? Or cleaning it. And as well, whilst being out there, you're kind of limited to what you have when it comes to cleaning, right? The odd washing machine scattered about, but it's just not the best of situations, of course, because it is in a desolate place and rough as well, with it being a desert area. So there is that. But I can kind of understand it from Mary's point of view because, we're talking about Dylan Round's phone, how it was in a certain position and recording Brenner. Maybe Dylan had the phone in his pocket or something. Dylan shot, but the phone was recording, let's say. And then as Dylan was taken into the trailer, left on the floor on his side, the phone was in perfect position and angling, showing Brenner doing what he was doing, maybe. But Candice Cooley said it's more than likely Brenner that recorded the video accidentally with a single swipe of the screen, which activated the camera mode and begun recording. Candice Cooley said she tried it herself on, somewhat relevant iPhones to what Dylan had, and it did happen, accidental recordings. So there is that. But The only thing I'll acknowledge, or at least agree with in terms of my actual opinion, is the concept of taking Dylan somewhere, kind of concealing him temporary, not the initial first burial, but just simply putting him to one side. You get what I'm saying? Because if Brenner's cleaning up or like trying to think, process what's the next thing to do, the next step, where to take Dylan, dispose of him, you don't really want him out in the open, literally in the open. Because although it's a ghost town, if you suddenly had a visitor, a hiker, a person passing by or directly going to the grain shed, whether it be an owner of one of the parcel lands, or there was some kind of delivery that needed to be made, who knows? They're going to see Dylan. So either possibility that Brenner took Dylan into the trailer, which I don't really believe strongly. So if it's not that, could be the grain shed, concealed in there. Not in the ground, but just at least concealed inside. If you're on the outside, you're not going to see Dylan, right? Unless you're literally at the entrance point of the shed. And with that, what do you call it, biological matter being found in there, supposedly, and that hole being there as well, that could have been where it happened, where Dylan was taken out, but also where Dylan was left temporarily. Does that make sense to you? But of course, if you've got different opinions, concepts, feel free to, leave it down below in the chat. And so, Pack and Go, great video. Shout out to Pack and Go. Indiana, good night, no rats. Yeah, true. Joseph Lloyd, I think this is one of your best videos. I can't believe it took the LE that long to search the pond for the phone. Unbelievable. You can understand why Candice has been so frustrated with the LE. There'll be lawsuits. Anything else? Ty Corbyn said, the phone was found early in the investigation. The data took time. Okay. What's this one? Spirit. Hi, Ty. That second search of Lucin Pond in December, when they drained it and mucked it out, they had to have been looking for JB's handgun, seeing as how Dylan's ended up back at the trailer. Kind of tells me that Dylan's wasn't the weapon that JB used or was seen cleaning. Time will tell. Okay. Interesting points there. Cavalite, what I was discussing just earlier on about the gun situation, that maybe a gun was used, but Dylan's, yes, no, Brenner's own, maybe. Which one is ultimately missing or not been found, supposedly? Brenner's pistol, Dylan's was returned back. Though, we can do it in maybe a separate dedicated video. Like if Brenner took Dylan's gun, and that was after the death of Dylan, what was the point of that? Is it because Brenner liked the look of it? He likes guns, he likes collecting and stealing them, just like with that 22 rifle? Maybe. Why would he have returned it back, supposedly? Well, maybe because he thought it would incriminate him if he was in possession of it. And, yeah. Actually, my question is, though, if it was after Dylan being reported missing by the family, early June, where Brenner passed on firearms to Don Haley to keep a hold of, did Brenner make any attempt in passing on Dylan Round's handgun to Don as well? Or was that the only gun Brenner kept a hold of? Does anyone know that? Because it just seems a little bit weird how Brenner is passing these firearms onto Don because he doesn't want to be caught in possession of them because he's been done for it in the past. So he's trying to avoid being punished again. Okay, but what about Dylan's handgun? If that wasn't passed on, then why be in possession of it if you feel that you're worried that these firearms will be taken away from you and you'll get in trouble once again? If you're going to hand guns over, you might as well hand them all over to someone. Though, you can imagine the reason why Brenner didn't do that, supposedly, with the handgun, supposedly, which he stole from Dylan's trailer, Dylan's farm, because Don might catch on to it and become suspicious and then, at the time, grass on him, possibly. Okay. What else do we have? Louise Harraway. Why has it taken so long for him to tell where Dylan is? Nobody has come close to finding him, so Brenner must have hidden him well. I hope he did not dismember him. I've never heard of them finding a first burial site. Did dogs find that? Was there some signs of Dylan in that grave? Right, what do we answer first of all? Why has it taken so long for him to tell where Dylan is? Well, it's probably taken that long because, Brenner being awkward, not wanting to tell. But this is the thing. Before we go any further, Louise, he has not revealed the location of where Dylan is actually at. Okay? He said he would reveal the location, though Candice Cooley does not want to make a deal with Brenner. So basically not much will come out of it. Okay? Candice Cooley and Justin feel confident that they'll be able to find it themselves when they can get back out searching. Okay? And I guess that confidence is there because the initial first burial site was found by Candice Cooley Justin. I don't think so. Probably LE. But at least someone did. And it was noted and documented in the official court documents as we read out previous. Now to add on, the bit where you're saying, I've never heard of them finding a first burial site. Did dogs find that? I don't know about dogs, but the way it's been worded, and if you want it word for word, as said, make sure to check out my previous video. But when going through the constant news articles, which were all consistent with one another, as well as the official court documents, basically, we came across a spot. They said desecration took place, right? So these news articles, these news articles, they didn't say burial site found, but they did say desecration took place. And desecration can be disturbance to a body in different shapes or forms, as well as removing and concealing the body elsewhere. So to come to that conclusion and that charge of desecration, the authority, the LE, must have known that Dylan had been moved from one spot to another, because that's what desecration is. So somehow they did come across a spot where Dylan was originally at, though when looking at it or when digging it up, Dylan was obviously not there. But I guess by taking a soil sample and sending it to the labs, it came back with some kind of DNA report of Dylan. So if Dylan was once here, as well as buried, but no longer there now, obviously desecration took place. Okay? So the very first initial place of interest to go searching out the spot, I'm not quite sure how that came about, okay? But it did somehow, and it did without Brenner confessing. And that's why Candice Cooley and Justin feel confident that they can do it a second time round, okay? Cleo, these maps and your point of views staying even during the rough times, you're very dependable, thank you. Shout out to Cleo, she is always here. There's been times where she might have not appeared in the chat, but she's either in the background or in the chat, which is good. So yeah, as well, Cleo, I guess sometimes Cleo can have the ability to cleanse the chat at times, times when Cleo wasn't here, it was a little bit chaotic, as some of you know. But then when you get the odd few regular people popping back in, returning consistent long-time viewers, such as like Cleo, it kind of disperses some of the darkness. So that's good. Louise, for that video to have recorded is like an act of God, I think. What's the chance of that, really? Yeah, I mean, it is one of those things. With it being more than likely accidental, You know, something accidental isn't planned, isn't guaranteed to happen. It just happens, whether that being unlucky or lucky. In this case, Brenner being unlucky as it incriminated himself, but for everyone else and the family seeking justice for Dylan was lucky. So yeah, that's true. Oh, more comments by Louise. Oh, saying, I don't understand how Brenner can be charged with murder, etc., when the case has not been to court yet. Did Brenner video the killing to show to someone who might have paid Brenner to kill Dylan and wanted proof before payment? Oh, right. I get what you mean about that second question. Let's just answer the first one. So, you should be aware of this, Louise. Past few videos, I do remember seeing you asking this comment in the comment section, and the odd person or so did respond back to you. Now, I can't remember what the exact reply was, but they did answer your question. So maybe if you check back, you might be able to find it. From what I can remember, though, you can be charged to begin with. You can be charged. Being charged is different to being convicted. Charged is like when you're associated and officially linked with a crime, and then you get taken in, you go through all that process, etc., eventually go to court, and then there is all the evidence in place and a case against you, enough to send you down. That's when you get convicted. That's when you receive your sentence, and then you go to prison. Okay? So you need to be charged before you get convicted. When you're convicted, that's when you're in court. When you're charged, that should be before court or before the conclusion part. Does that make sense? Hopefully I worded that correctly. If not, someone else can probably answer it better. Louise, did Dylan goad Brenner? Maybe. I'm not saying Dylan deserved being killed. I just wonder if he maybe took the piss out of Brenner. I mean, you never know. You never know. And I guess with Brenner having a short fuse, if you made a joke or something, maybe Brenner wasn't in a good mood on the day. I guess it depends how things have gone in the past. If Dylan was in closer proximity to Brenner in the past when they were working together on stuff and maybe in the same trailer as one another or just close to one trailer to another, nothing seemed to have happened back then. So maybe they did make jokes. Maybe there was some conversation back then, but it didn't lead to Brenner doing anything. So, yeah, snap mentality, hearing the odd joke, the odd remark. May have not took it too well, possibly. But Candy's Cooley, mainly Justin, talking about the horse gate, horse pen or something, being damaged, possibly, which then frustrated Brenner. Brenner himself saying that did frustrate him, but Justin saying, don't know if it was Dylan who did that or Brenner himself because he's a clumsy idiot at times. You remember that said in that recent interview? Oh, and also, I just need to respond back to that previous question by Louise saying, did Brenner video the killing to show to someone who might have paid Brenner to kill Dylan and wanted proof before payment? Yeah, I understand that where you got to take a photo, like contract killing, say, I've done the job, now pay me. I get that. But if the video is just basically of Brenner in a trailer, just with blood on his sleeves and cleaning a gun, and there's no indication of Dylan being present, then it doesn't really prove that Brenner did it in the sense of if you was being paid by someone to prove that you did it. The police know, the family know that Brenner did it based off the evidence and all that collected. Though at that time, at that moment when it did go down on the 28th, I just don't think Brenner did plan on recording anything at all. I don't think he has done in the past either. He doesn't seem like the type of guy to start recording, right? Maybe if he was younger, you know, and a bit more up to date with technology, he probably would have taken a photo or maybe a video, but I just don't think he was really thinking at the time. And, you know, if he's clumsy or he's fumbling around with Dylan's phone, you know, you could accidentally get into the record mode and then start recording. Any more? Louise. We read that one, didn't we? Just Jen. Shout out to Jen. I heard Dylan's gun was in his glove compartment. He should have had it on him for safety, living in the sticks. Then you know the story, it wasn't there, then reappeared. Yeah. I mean, from what Candice Cooley has said, Dylan would often leave his handgun pistol in his vehicle most of the time. He wouldn't really walk around with it. Okay, fair enough. So Dylan must have felt somewhat safe most of the time. 9 times out of 10 felt safe. That's why he didn't need gun on him for protection. But this occasion didn't go too well. But this is the thing, even if Dylan had a gun on him, would Dylan have shot in self-defense? Would he even have had time to defend himself? All depends on Brenner, right? Was it a cheap shot? Shot in the back, cowardly? An ambush? No time to prepare? Not expecting it? You know, you got to take those things into mind, right? Yeah. Wendell Lawless. Shout out to them, a new viewer, I believe, saying, I wonder if Brenner's phone pings have been looked at to track his locations. Let's hope he didn't still have a clam phone. Clam phone where it opens and shuts. Flip phone. I guess is that badger? Is that American slang? Clam phone. Is that dodgy American language? Or, because I've never really heard of it before, but I kind of understand it. Yeah, well, this is the thing. The way it's been worded by Candice Cooley, and it may not be the case if they can somehow get that footage from Dylan's phone, is that previously Candice Cooley said that Brenner had an old flip phone, so it was limited, as well as data which you could collect from it, because it wasn't done in a 7-day period. All that data was erased and there was nothing else to be found on the phone. Okay? Unless police were able to do a deeper search on it, maybe. Do you really need Brenner's phone to track his whereabouts? I mean, I guess it would further validate it, right? Most part of the way this case has gone, what Candice Cooley has linked, and I think Justin agrees as well, and so do others, and I guess authorities to an extent, as well as YouTubers and viewers, that by associating Dylan Round's phone with the movement and whereabouts of Brenner. And it could be like, yeah, but how do you really know Brenner is in possession of Dylan's phone? Well, as we did with that timeline previous, right? 7:03, Dylan gets to the grain shed from the looks of it. Fast forward 27 to 30 minutes later, that's when the video recording is present of Brenner inside of the trailer with blood on him. So within 27 to 30 minutes of Dylan getting there on site, he was taken out quickly. Okay? So that's when Dylan was killed. Wherever Dylan's phone went from there on, then most likely someone else was holding it, because Dylan couldn't be walking around if he's already dead, right? So that's why you associate it with Brenner. Sure, it could be somebody else randomly out there, but it just seems to tie more with Brenner being really the only one directly on site, and also being the one that went by to the pond, he said himself when recalling previous. And it just happened that the phone was found dumped in there, so Brenner likely dumped it in there. So you see that pattern, that order. That's why it's associating Dylan's phone with Brenner's whereabouts past a certain point, past 7:27 a.m. Okay? Hopefully that clears that up. But yeah, Brenner's phone would further validate things, though don't know if it's retrievable in terms of data. Fadine Reed. Why not a long time ago? I guess they're referring to why weren't the charges and all that taken care of quicker. Well, supposedly Ellie, how they've handled things, how things have just been delayed, been unfortunate. Live with Nick. Did I hear right that an original burial site was found, meaning that he was buried, then moved somewhere else? Yes, that's basically what happened. That's why in the official documents they said that they weren't able to retrieve Dylan at the zone, at the site, due to desecration. Desecration is like disturbance, removing remains of someone, and it was specifically worded as desecration of corpse. So if you got a hole where someone's been buried, then they've been dug up in between and moved elsewhere, and then authorities came along to the original spot, dug it up, realised nothing's there, but did a soil sample, then found the DNA that was linked to Dylan, you'd say Dylan was once here, but no longer. So he's been moved. Desecration. So that's basically it, okay? Also, Nick, if you go back to one of my previous videos, maybe like 2-3 days ago, I showed official court documents and a press release by Boxelder, okay, the LE. So if you want it more official, you want it word for word, feel free to check that video out, okay? Badger Life saying, I believe Brenner spent about 5 minutes total in Dylan's trailer. The rest of the time, I think he loaded up what he needed at Dylan's property to desecrate his body and did it in the shed. When you say and did it in the shed, do you mean killed Dylan in the shed or begun the desecration inside of the shed? What's your thoughts? Because that hole in the shed, at least, is too small for Dylan to be put into, okay? And it'll be obvious to most people. But there was obviously DNA found there, something at least, which blood supposedly by Shack Lady, as she's worded, but we'll get more to that later, okay? But just let me know exactly what you mean, Badger, okay? You think that about 5 minutes at Dylan's trailer, and then the rest of that time remainder was just loading it up. Do you believe it was loading it up on Brenner's own vehicle or Dylan's pickup truck? What truck or what form of transportation do you think was used and loaded up? Let me know your thoughts, Badger, okay? But yeah, I mean, we can do a dedicated video to that and start a focused discussion point. Of course, we can do that next time round if you want that. Just at this moment in time, I want to focus more on the potential of ballistics, gun usage, and any evidence signs of that, okay? Mac Kevin, the old rule of investigation, follow the money. Is someone paying Brenner to confess, check his bank and inmate accounts. Okay. I mean, outside bank accounts, probably not. No activity, but the inmate accounts, I've never really heard of that myself, but yeah, maybe you could check that if possible. When I asked the previous question, putting money on the books, one of the persons did respond back, which was good of them, saying it's basically where you can put money towards the inmate who can afford some food. So the cost was towards some food. Okay. But yeah, if there's any other money put forwards, given out, given to, interesting. Wrangle, great news. He was only 19 and vanished at my birthday. I hope they would be able to make a proper autopsy. Okay. Louise again. I thought they only had 2 pigs and one was eaten at the barbecue that Kurt had. Never heard of that before. Never heard of that. Unless it's a rumour, BS, misinformation, or, something not as important. From what I've heard of, from what Candice Cooley had said, was way back in the past, Dylan and Kurt had some pigs, but they eventually died. And then I guess after that, I assume Dylan in Idaho had some pigs there, Brenner helping out. That's all I've really heard. Don't think it really links too much with the disappearance of Dylan Van. Louise, I think if the death penalty is on the table, Brenner won't talk. They won't find Dylan without Brenner. I personally would have to have the body. If he got life without parole and not the death penalty, I'd take that. He's not young and he's not in good health, so if he died without talking, Dylan might never be found. Well, First of all, death penalty or not, Candice Cooley said Brenner has said himself that he would reveal the location of where Dylan is actually at. Okay, so that's already been confirmed, that's already been said. But Candice Cooley just didn't feel they want the freedom, the choice and option to be able to find Dylan themselves. Okay? And the bit about saying Dylan might never be found, I feel that worst comes to worst, and if Brenner passed away or just never opened up because of, I guess, being rejected from the offer, I feel that the family will be able to find Dylan eventually, but it'll take much longer than expected, right? You've got the easy option or the hard option. The hard option is more rewarding but more risky. The hard option is rejecting help from Brenner and looking yourself. The easy option is making a deal with the person responsible for Dylan going missing, which isn't great, but maybe more effective. Though both outcomes can have their own negatives as well. If you do it yourself, you may never find Dylan. And if Brenner passes away, then there's really not much hope. But, they've done it the first time round. The original spot where Dylan once was at, but moved on. You might have a second chance, second time lucky to be able to find where Dylan actually is. As for the easy option, really the only negative with that is Brenner could say he will reveal location, but he might send you on a wild goose chase, make you look like an idiot, give you false hope, waste your time, and just cause even more distraught and trouble. Maybe Candice Cooley Justin have already thought that through. You never know. Timothy Matson, shout out to Timothy, new viewer. He has needed to do this for a while already. Who are you talking about? Brenner, needed to do this for a while already. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. M. Squires, new viewer, shout out to them. How did Chase Venstra know that the phone was in Lucin Pond? He led police to the phone location. Maybe he took the video and edited himself out the video. I might have heard about this as something roughly, as you say, I don't pick up on everything 24/7. If Ty Corbyn is present, he might be able to explain a bit clearer, because I'm sure Ty Corbyn did refer to something like this about Chase Venstra or Robert Aviles being in the area at the time of the phone being found. But I'm not going to go too deep into that because I don't ultimately know, and there's no point going around it loosely, okay? If Venstra was supposedly recording that video, then, well, first of all, Venstra has that alibi. At the time of when, roughly speaking, at the time of when Dylan was murdered, Chase Venstra was at Snowville at the Flying J, I believe it's called. From there to Lucin, I don't think you could do that in 30 minutes, and even if you did, Dylan would have already been killed by them. So, I don't think there's really a link there. But, in the chat, let me know your thoughts. Any other additional... Okay, what's this? I don't know there had been a burial spot, so you're saying that Dylan had been buried, then moved to another location? Yes, and that's why Brenner has also been charged with desecration of a corpse. That's what desecration is, moving a body. I know people can say that, well, it can also apply to Dylan being cut up or burnt. But if that really was the case, then technically they would have already found Dylan's remains already, right? But they're saying they haven't. But they can prove that it's been moved because DNA had been found in a spot where Dylan was once at, hence desecration. Does that make sense to you? If Dylan was burnt, if his body was cut up, that can also be counted as desecration, though you would need, I guess, physical evidence of that. Like, if you found a bone of Dylan, if you found some clothing of Dylan's but burnt, you could say desecration in that sense, though Dylan has not been found at all. Though remnants, DNA at least, just to show that Dylan was once here, of desecration, moved elsewhere. That's really all I can say, like, without making it too confusing. Louise, I defo think Don Hately knew that Brenner had killed Dylan. If Dylan was buried around the property, I would have thought the dogs would have picked up Dylan's scent. I wonder why the boots were taken off and left. Some people have previously said that the boots were taken off because they are harder to decompose and wear down if they're like buried in the ground, unlike clothing, which can, I guess, break down quicker. That's what some people have said. Unless there was some kind of struggle and the boots fell off. You know, if the boots were near to the grain shed and Dylan was near to the grain shed at the time of when he was taken out, boots might have came off in that process, and that's why Brenner took the boots to the dirt mound, hence why there's prints on. And, you know, with the blood being found on Dylan's boot, well, a blood droplet, let's say, on one of the boots, then that same blood is probably a part of the blood which was on Brenner's sleeves. So looks like that Dylan was wearing his boots at the time he got killed, and then the boots came off after that, I'd say. Let me know your thoughts. Is that it for the comments? Looks to be the case. Now, I did say about going on to that other YouTube channel just to read out their recent comment. I guess we can fit that in right now. Right, here we are with Bed Crime Stories. Some of you probably have heard of the channel. And here's the post, 17 hours ago, community tab page. There's Dylan. Let's just read what's said here. Is it a long one? Oh shit, it is a bit, but you know, one of the viewers requested I had a look at it, so I'll just do it on the spot. Purpose of this is just to see if there's consistencies, if there's any additional information I've never heard of before, or if there's any misinformation, right? And just read through it. Best we can do. New info on Dylan Round's case, 17 hours ago. Dylan Rounds, in case you didn't know, is the 19-year-old farmer who disappeared from his farm in the remote town of Lucin, Utah, back on May 26th of 2022. Oh, fuck me. Oh, for fuck's sake, what's with that dodgy date? 26th of May! Oh, God. I thought it was the 28th. Oh, fuck me. Like, he was last seen 27th in Montello, right? Leaving. Last heard of auditory with the call made on the 28th. Oh, God. Disappeared from his farm in a remote town of... Fuck me, what is that? 26th of May! Oh, God. So, unless it's worded in some kind of way that my mind can't seem to pick up on it at the moment, I don't know if I'm having a shack lady moment or I'm reading it how it is, but basically Dylan was reported missing by the parents the 30th of May. A few days before that, the 28th. That's when Dylan was last heard of, when that call was made to the grandma at 6:51 a.m. in the morning, followed by 6:57 a.m., a few minutes on, making a call to Brenner, which wasn't successful, okay? So Dylan was alive in the early hours of the morning on the 28th, okay? And that's his last time of being alive. The days before that isn't as important, okay? If you talk about visually seen, physically seen with people's own eyes, that would be the 27th, okay? When Dylan was still in Montello. Unless there's some kind of misinformation that Dylan wasn't there the 27th. But from everything I've heard of with time, 26th to the 27th, Dylan in Montello, Nevada. Then later on in the day of the 27th, going back to Lucin, Utah, right? My God, this is a bad start already. I recently made a video about Dylan's case in which I shared that the suspect in the case, Jim Brenner, was finally charged with Dylan's murder. That's a big deal because the authorities have been sitting on this case since Dylan vanished. His parents, Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds, have had to fight every step of the way to get the authorities to take their son's disappearance case seriously. Cooley and Rounds. What? Do you mean Cooley and Justin Rounds? Yeah, you need to word it a bit better. Knew from the first day when they realised Justin was missing that Dylan was deceased. Oh, for fuck's sake, what is this? Oh my God. Right. Shack Lady, have you been giving this person typing lessons? My God, even Joy Perry could do a better job, and that's saying something. No, but let's just be focused and try and clear what's been said here, what the person meant to say, okay? This person meant to say Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds knew from the first day when they realised Dylan was missing, that Dylan was deceased, okay? Seeing his boots behind the dirt pile near Brenner's trailer sealed the deal for them. Dylan never went anywhere on his farm without those boots on his feet. Well, he might have gone about with different boots over time, though, if you want to, Here are some new fascinating details regarding the timeline on the day Dylan went missing. Oh, here we go. When the authorities pulled Dylan's cell phone from Lucin Pond, where Brenner allegedly threw it, they found a video on it of Brenner wearing a bloody shirt with blood on his arms cleaning a gun. Pretty damning evidence. Okay. Well, this is the thing. I don't think the video was just simply on Dylan's phone, because when Candice Cooley cloned it, they didn't see anything odd about it, right? A deep forensic analysis was done on the phone. So, to be able to access maybe files which are no longer there or have been deleted, maybe, corrupted possibly. So I don't think they were just simply on there, okay? Anyway, by some miracle from above, Dylan's phone was triggered to take this video of Brenner inside his trailer, cleaning the gun. The second miracle is that the phone and video were able to be salvaged after laying at the bottom of Lucin Pond for so long. Dylan, like Libby German and Paul Murdoff, appears to somehow helped solve his own case. Divine intervention, it certainly makes you believe so. Whilst, yes, you can get spiritual, you can get hopeful, you can get the Bible and the cross and whip your oil out and do whatever, I think let's be somewhat realistic. It's a positive that this video just so happened to come about for it to be recorded in the first place, but it seems likely it was accidental and it was Brenner being clumsy, right? He's been clumsy before. Let's remember, the way it's been worded in the past, Brenner being responsible for his own trailer blowing up because he left the stove on and he had gas canisters nearby inside of the trailer, right? Clumsiness, recklessness, absent-minded at times, not thinking about his actions or the consequences can result in disaster. And just generally physically clumsy, I'd know about that. I've broken doors, I've broken doorknobs, I've walked away with a greenhouse door in my hand when I wasn't supposed to. I've broken the bed all by myself when I jumped on it. So I know what it's like to be physically clumsy. And as well, I've also experienced recording videos when I wasn't supposed to. Not in a dodgy way, of course, but like if I was sat there on the bed preparing for a video and then I realise, oh, it's already on record. And then there's been other times where I've literally sat there for 30 minutes up to 40 minutes long talking and then realised I didn't even press the record button, right? So, most likely human error, human clumsiness, being unlucky, but for others wanting justice, like the family and general public, lucky, good outcome for them, okay? Let's continue. Dylan was at the gate to the property of the grain shed, with the grain shed and where Brenner was squatting, at 6:57 a.m. on the day he vanished. That's when Dylan briefly spoke with his grandmother. No. Incorrect. 6:51 a.m. when Dylan made a call to the grandmother, Karen Rounds, about parking the grain truck in the grain shed. 6:57 a.m. or 6:58 a.m. is when Dylan made a second call, but to Brenner, who's on site. I assume about the gate with it being locked. Okay, so kind of misinformation there. Dylan also likely called Brenner around this time to let him in through the gate. Dylan also likely, well, Candice Cooley said he did. Okay, and I guess if you look at the phone records and all that, it'll prove that. And it wasn't exactly around the same amount of time. 6:51, and then several minutes later, 6:57. 2 different calls made. Okay, hopefully that's cleared that up. It would have taken him maybe 5 more minutes to get up to the shed where he was planning to store his grain shed whilst it rained. Whilst he was planning to store his grain. Well, it should be seed, not grain. Does seed turn into grain? Is grain seed? I'm not a farmer, but I've always heard it as seed. Protects Dylan's seed. Okay, seed in the truck. But then you call it grain truck. Well, either way, that resource needed to be concealed so it wouldn't get impacted by the rain. That's why it went to the grain shed and supposedly successfully done. Okay. So he's at the shed at, say, 7:02 a.m. Candice Cooley said about 7:03 a.m. But yeah, okay. The video of a bloodied Jim Brenner cleaning his gun inside his own trailer was taken at 7:27 a.m. Yep. So that means the crime occurred between 7:02 a.m. to 7:27, roughly within a 25 to 30 minute period. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Many have asked Cooley and Rounds if they know why Brenner did this to Dylan, and they responded that Brenner had a snap moment. Well, likely. Apparently, Brenner claims that whilst Dylan was backing his grain truck into the shed, he hit his horse gate. Brenner was so miffed about it that he told Dylan's dad about it on the day Cooley and Rounds first showed up in Lucin after learning about Dylan being missing. Well, the bit about Dylan was backing his grain truck into the shed, Candice Cooley didn't quite say that. Candice Cooley said when Dylan was in his truck at some point, may have accidentally crashed into something. And it was more Justin that said it, not Candice Cooley. Candice Cooley actually said that she feels confident. She said that Dylan was able to make it to the property, but when it comes to parking the grain truck into the grain shed, she's unsure whether Dylan was the one responsible. But it could have been Brenner, possibly. Okay? So you've kind of worded it somewhat incorrectly there. Okay? Let's move on. I've said all along that this was about an argument between Brenner and Dylan, and so many people said, "You're trying to tell me that this guy killed this young man over a gate?" Yes, I'm saying that. We judge these perpetrators like they have rational minds, rational tempers. Well, guess what? They don't. People snap, and in seconds to minutes, they can take a life. It's hard for people who don't have such violence in them to understand. This is why there's a true crime show called Snapped. People snap. Well, yeah. I mean, all you have to really do is look back at Brenner's past criminal history. Did he reoffend? Yes, multiple times. Was it mostly violent, physical related stuff? Yes. Did it involve firearms and both, other means like the fist? Yes. Did it happen again? Most likely. Yes. That's all you have to really do. Snapping or not. If a person keeps reoffending, then, there's a chance that it'll happen again and again and again. They just don't learn, right? Maybe it's because they can't control themselves. such as snapping, losing control that way. Maybe because they want to for some reason. You know, sometimes you don't have to look too deep into some things, right? Okay. But like this thing, not so much by this person, but the whole argument about, I told you so, I told you about this, I told you about that. That is where it gets a little bit petty. You see a bit of bitchy attitude, and where some people within the community will do that 360-degree turn. Hallelujah, I've seen the light. This exactly what happened. I was in agreement from day one. Don't know what everyone else was thinking about. Don't know how you could accuse this person or accuse that person. Don't know why you were adding this in. Don't know why you were talking about that misinformation. Don't know why you were talking about Kurt Wadsworth. Oh my God. And it's like, excuse me, you actually did say that. You were different in the past. You had a different mindset, a different attitude back then. But you're suddenly changing it now to suit the way the actual story is going, the case. So you don't look like an idiot. So you look like you're right, like you've got a better track record and a better accuracy rate. That is what humans could do. And it's kind of tying it in with what I said in response to Badger's comment when Badger was saying, what about all those other audience members on other channels out there? Are they going to come forth and apologise for how they've behaved or things they may have said or how they may have accused certain people? And I said that if that ever was the case, likely they probably wouldn't admit or apologise. They'd just do a 360-degree turn and basically be all positive, supportive and kind and follow the story and stick to it, okay? That's the way I say it, at least. When it comes to me, all these different scenarios, situations, outcomes, possibilities, methods, people responsible, I could say that I was right about a lot of things, though I can't claim that because you think back, I was throwing a lot of stuff about into the hat, juggling a lot of balls, right? Because it was theory-based. It wasn't always fact-based, but luckily in recent time it's become more stronger, okay, more reinforced. But back then it was looking at different ideas, different possibilities, different methods, deconstructions, reconstructions, all of that, dissecting and stitching back together at a later point, Dr. Raff style, okay? And in recent times, some of those points have been reinforced. Some of those things have actually come out. And it's like, oh, wow, that's interesting. We did touch upon that in the past. So that's how it works for me. The only time when I say, oh, I was right, is when I've done my little predictions within the case. Like how something turns out, whether it be directly in the case or within the community of the case. People are witnesses in the chat right now who would have seen, heard, and saw the after effects after when predictions were made, okay? So if it needs backing up, it can be backed up, right? Anyway, let's carry on reading. Sadly, there is not additional video. Yeah. It would have been good if the entire crime was captured for evidence sake, but this video is pretty damning. Yeah, okay, true. Again, how did the phone start recording? Likely Brenner swiped the phone by accident and hit the wrong button. Amazing grace. Yeah, that's what Kenny's Cooley said. Brenner has basically confessed to the crime, yeah, according to Dylan's parents, yeah. But the parents are not willing to give Brenner an easy pass and short time in prison for info on where Dylan is. Well, yeah, they're not agreeing to make a deal with Brenner, but they didn't exactly plan out or word out what the deal was going to be because they never even begun one or begun negotiations. So maybe it is to do with more so lesser prison time, but it wasn't said for definite. Okay, so we've got to be careful there with the wording. They are confident that they will be able to find Dylan with the many professional organisations who've been helping them. Brenner has said that he knows where the body is and he will tell the parents if they agree to lesser charges. Well, I've not heard it exactly worded like that. What Candice Cooley basically said when nodding to Nate Eaton about the question of Brenner, saying that he would tell us where the body is. Not that he will. He would. Right? There's a difference between will and would. Okay? Would sounds more like what originally could have happened. Okay, I've tried to use a different word without using the same word. You get what I'm saying? And that's probably because, obviously, that deal wasn't struck up. Candice Cooley couldn't accept it. So,
In a different world, yeah, may have happened, but it didn't. Could it happen down the line? Maybe, depends if Brenner's awkward or not. His parents are at this point unwilling to let Brenner off with a more lenient sentence. Yes, they seem more strongly on fulfilling that death penalty, both Candice Cooley and Justin in agreement. The parents believe that Brenner likely first buried Dylan somewhere near the Lucin pond or Dylan's farm, but that Brenner later moved the body. Desecration. Yeah, I can roughly agree with that. The bit about in between the pond and Dylan's farm, which is quite a stretch, to be fair, in terms of total distance. Dylan's farm to grain shed to pond, that's quite wide. But that was because Nate Eaton in the interview did say, you think he's within the vicinity between pond and here? And Candice Cooley said, yes, he was. He was, but not now. Because he's been moved elsewhere. And that's the question, where now? Yeah. What's this? They are frustrated because Brenner should have been taken into custody from day one because he had an outstanding felony warrant for his arrest on assault charges at that time. 2021, an attack, a launcher used on, I think, Bivens, not Bivens. Correct me if I'm wrong, it's the other name. And kicked him repeatedly on the ground in the stomach and head. Box Elder police opted to let Brenner stay on the property for months and months, giving him ample time to move a body. Yeah, unless Box Elder were watching Brenner. But if that was the case, if Brenner were just simply watching Brenner's movements, behavioural patterns and all of that, yeah, that could have been somewhat useful. But clearly they failed because Brenner was able to do that spring cleaning and get rid of whatever, and the police weren't able to recover it because they don't know where it is. Great job. And as well, if it's within that time frame, desecration as well. Well, the police, well, to be honest, you could say maybe the police did monitor to an extent. No, they couldn't have done because it would have been still too slow anyway to get to that first burial site. Yeah, scrap that. Okay, moving on. Dylan's parents have been to hell and back thanks to Brenner's cold-hearted criminality and Box Elder's failure to act. Yeah, cold-hearted. Right. Dylan's parents want it known that Jim Brenner was never a family friend. Don Hately was the connection to Dylan's grandparents, and it is Don Hately who moved Brenner from Montello to Lucin. Brenner was causing trouble in Montello, so Hately decided it would be better to put Brenner way out of town in Lucin. Cooley and Rounds want Brenner to get the death penalty. Okay. So, in a way, good summary, but there were some critical points and timestamps and dates which were quite off, and a bit of poor wording and the odd names mixed up with one another. So if you are reading this for the very first time impressions, you could be led astray. So you might need to re-edit it, Bed Crime Stories, okay? Just so it doesn't backfire down the line, so you can reduce any resistance, okay? But for most part of it, pretty summed up, I'd say. I mean, probably quicker than some of my videos, to be fair. But I guess my videos aren't as messy in terms of trying to word it, right? But then again, I focus a lot on language and wording, right? So I guess that's just the difference there. But yeah, that's Bedtime Crime Stories.
I think at this point it's probably best to transition on to some more established news articles and just read the current news or the latest information on the Dylan Rounds case if there's anything additional, but also more importantly to kind of cleanse the palate of what we just previously read, okay, just to tie things back in line so no one suddenly starts going down a route, getting lost into the dark and thinking, oh god, where am I at now? So that's what we'll do in a second. We'll just go to that. I mean, there's two articles, one by Fox News. Don't know if I've read out a Fox News one yet. Looked at, was it NBC? Well, probably East Idaho News, but that was more the video basis one, not the transcript. KSL or something, news, and so on. But we've got a few more to look at today. It's just to look for any inconsistencies or consistencies any misinformation or any additional info I've never heard of before. So we might as well keep that pattern up, right? And then once we got through that, then we look at the photos, then we look at potential bullet holes. Okay, let's head on over now.
To begin with, we've got this website called people.com. I don't know if it's got anything to do with that user on YouTube. We the people! I've not seen We the People for a long time! Where have you gone? You got lost in America? I hope not. Well, actually, in a way, I hope so, because to be honest, it's been a bit quieter and more peaceful in recent time. But yeah, let's read this news article. The title: Parents of Dylan Rounds say they can start moving forwards after suspect has been charged with murder. The 19-year-old who was killed in Utah on a parcel of land he'd purchased was your true American farmer, according to his mother. Oh, no. I said we were going to go into a news article that would cleanse our palate. Just give another bad taste in my mouth. This is almost like going from Burger King's to Little Caesar's Pizza to Sonic. Oh, God. The way that's been worded: was killed on a parcel of land which he'd purchased. No, he didn't purchase that parcel of land. He didn't even own the grain shed or the property around it or the parcels of land around it. This is poorly worded, okay? Dylan, supposedly with his grandfather, bought the farm, which was 5 miles, call it southeast, I think that's how it's more worded, southeast, 5 miles away from the grain shed. Dylan did not own or buy the grain shed. He had plans for the future, but that was for the future only. So Dylan supposedly was killed on a parcel of land which he did not purchase, but it was near to a parcel of land in which Brenner was supposedly squatting on, near to the grain shed. Okay, that's how it should be worded. So great start already. Let's move on. The parents of a 19-year-old Utah farmer who's allegedly murdered in 2022 said that they were ready to move. Yep. James Brenner, 59. So this one's saying Brenner's 59 years old. But then that previous news article, what we read, saying Brenner is 60 years old. And then I checked this morning of another news article in video format on YouTube saying Brenner is 60 years old. Fucking hell. One age or the other. Anyway, Brenner charged last Friday with 1 count of aggravated murder in the death of Dylan Rounds and 1 count of abuse or desecration of a human body, according to court records per eastidahonews.com. Again, in quotes, "For us as a family and for Dylan, this is a huge win. This cannot be swept under the rug. It's out there, charges are filed, and we can start moving forwards," Rounds' mother Candice Cooley told the outlet Thursday. Okay. Rounds, who had purchased hundreds of acres of land in the remote Utah desert several years ago in the pursuit of his dream to own a farm. As for acres, how many? Well, from how it was worded in the past, and correct me if I'm wrong, but on that forum page, what we were looking at, that forum website, it was about 470 acres. I don't know if that's what Dylan got, or if it was referring to Dylan's grandfather who owned 470 acres in the area. You get me? So I'm not going in hard with that in confidence. Okay. So it says, last spoke to his grandmother in May 2022. Fucking hell. May 2022? That could be any time. It's not even giving the date. It's not even saying the 28th of May. It's just saying May 2022. Oh yeah, that's really helpful, isn't it? Don't bother giving a date, day, timestamp. Useless. Oh God. Telling her he was moving his grain truck from his camper in northwest Utah near the Nevada border to a shed about 5 miles away to escape a... Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing here, but this is fucking stupid the way this is worded. Absolute twat of a human. What the hell has gone on here the way this has been worded? Let me just read it again, just to make sure I'm not being an idiot. Telling her he was moving his grain truck from his camper in northwest Utah. Northwest Utah? Northwest Utah? Well, that's going into Montello. Oh, wait. Hold on. It's because of the dodgy fucking coordinates. That's exactly why the coordinates. Okay? So basically, well, no, you can't really say that, to be honest. Okay, Dylan, when he woke up in the morning, he was at his farm, and then he would have had to have gone west, then turn north to the grain shed. That's how it should be worded. It's a bit dodgy the way this has been worded. And as well, that call made was when he was almost already at the grain shed, okay? So it's just very dodgy wording. I guess it all comes down to how you interpret this language. That's the factor. Luckily, I was able to understand it right on the spot after that mini meltdown. But to escape a rainstorm, I mean, it was worded by the campers, the witnesses who were near Little Pigeon Mountain, saying that it rained hellaciously in the early hours of the morning of the 28th. So there's that to take in mind. It says, Cooley, who lives in Idaho, found out on May 30th that nobody in the family had spoken to Rounds since then. Yeah, I think so, yeah. In quotes, I would go there 3 or 4 days without talking to him, and then I'd talk to him 5 days in a row. She told people in June of last year, but he was always in contact with somebody. So when we all put together that nobody talked to him, that's when we all headed down to the farm. Okay, yep, I remember hearing that. Once there, Cooley said they found his grain truck in the shed. A search and rescue team later discovered his boots behind a pile of dirt, one of which had blood stain confirming through DNA analysis to belong to the missing teen, Dylan Rounds. According to a federal complaint obtained by People, Brenner was squatting in a trailer on property where Rounds kept his grain truck. Federal complaint. Is that to do with the firearm? I don't know. Must be, yeah. During a search of Brenner's trailer on June 16th, authorities found ball ammunition, ignition caps. Yeah, we've seen that. On June 20th, a friend, Don Haley, basically. Wait, a friend and neighbour. Oh, okay, yeah, same person, Don Haley, told authorities that after the teen disappeared and Brenner was interviewed by authorities, Brenner allegedly brought the 3 black powder guns over to his house and asked him to keep safe of them, according to the federal complaint, asking why it needed to be done for his own safety, because in the past everything was taken away from him and served 33 months. Didn't want it to happen again. Anyway, let's move on. Court documents filed in Box, Elder County, Utah, show investigators conducted a digital forensic download of Rounds' phone and discovered a video with a timestamp taken at the time Rounds disappeared. 7:27 a.m. Well, now. The video, in quotes, showed the defendant with bloodstains on his arms, and shirt as he was cleaning a gun. The shirt which defendant is wearing in the video was analysed and the victim's DNA was found on the shirt, the probable cause statement says. Cooley said that ever since her son was very young, he dreamed of one day owning his farm. In quotes, from the time he was little, he just wanted to farm. She previously told People he was your true American farmer. Dylan would have been one of those good old boys in his overalls in the coffee shop, chewing straw, drinking coffee. That's what he was. That's what he was born to be. And we've heard previous with the backstories about Dylan when he was in school, but then when the virus came about, and I guess he had lockdown away from the school, I guess that might have sped things up, acted more of a catalyst. But I believe Kenny Cooley said he did finish high school. No, actually no. No, I'm sure I heard Candice Cooley say that Dylan left high school before graduating. Let me know if you can correct that if necessary. Feel free to do so in the chat, okay? Is that it for that article? Right. Wasn't the best, to be fair. There was a bit of misinformation up top and poorly worded. Let's move on to the next article. Now, this article by foxnews.com. Okay, we'll see if this one's any better the way it's worded. Utah farmer Dylan Rounds remains missing as prime suspect charged with murder. James Brenner, a violent ex-convict, was squatting on property next to parcel owned by then the 19-year-old Utah man. Wait, hold on. Oh no. Not again. Not, oh my God, not again. Why is it saying property next? Well, no. Dylan did not own that parcel of land, the grain shed. He did not own it. Yeah, he had his farm and that was all, and that was 5 miles southeast. This is poorly worded once again. This is not good. Unless I'm reading it for some reason incorrectly, but does anyone else agree that this is shit in terms of how it's been worded? A violent ex-convict. Ex? Isn't it better calling it reoffending individual or something? You've taken mine 2021. Not a good start. March 10th, 2023, 10:07 a.m. EST. Dylan Rounds, a teen farmer from Idaho who set out on his own in Utah and was expecting his first harvest when he vanished last year, remains unaccounted for 1 week after police charged his ex-con neighbour with his murder. Bit of a weird way of wording it. James Brenner, 59, shot a man at a Maryland campground in the 1980s over a work dispute. Court records show, and has been in custody since July after police found the felon unlawfully in possession of multiple firearms following the disappearance of Rounds, who was 19 when he was last seen and would be 20 on this day. The bit where it's talking about Maryland is a little bit short, to be honest. From what we've seen previous and how it was worded was basically that, that Maryland, it was at first treated as almost like attempted murder, but because of the way it went, like because the person wasn't exactly killed, it was kind of reduced, I guess, by the attorney. They kind of played it down, minimalized, saying, yeah, it was a shooting, it was bad, but it wasn't like full-on murder. Some of you will be able to word it much better than what I did there, but my previous video did cover it word for word officially from I think it was the court document or press release, one of them. So if he's had attorneys in the past that have been able to word things, twist stuff, minimalize, lessen the significance, the seriousness of a crime, will it happen again this time? Probably not, because of the evidence and the actual outcome. This time it resulted in death, whereas back then Maryland, it did not result in death. So that's why it was lessened, the actual name of the crime. Okay. Bucks Elder County authorities announced the murder charge last week after they said they had recovered Rounds' phone, an incriminating video on it allegedly showing Brenner wearing bloody clothes and cleaning a gun. Deputies found the clothes and Rounds' DNA on them, according to authorities. Okay. Just a little caption now. Brenner was squatting on land next to Rounds' property. Incorrect. Not at all. Brenner's squatting near the grain shed, 5 miles away from Dylan's farm. It should be worded as. That's where authorities found the missing man's boots and farm truck, according to court documents. Oh, Jesus. The boots were found kind of near to where Brenner was squatting, because it was near the dirt mound, in which the dirt mound is near to where Brenner's squatting, in which Brenner is near to the grain shed, because it's all on that land. Farm truck? Well, what do you mean by farm truck? You mean the grain truck? This is what I mean. Poor wording ends up leading to me malfunctioning, pausing, and trying to make sense of what truck, what farm truck. I think what they meant to say here was grain truck, but because earlier it said about Brenner squatting near to Rounds' property, and when it said farm truck, I instantly thought, oh, are they talking about Dylan's pickup truck? This is why things can get confusing. So we'll read it out once again to make it clear. What should have been said here was Brenner supposedly squatting near to the grain shed, a parcel of land where there's several parcels of land nearby which can be all shared or so, which is 5 miles away from Dylan's farm being kind of like southeast, 5 miles away. The boots found near to where Brenner was squatting, at the dirt mound, which is like 100 yards away from the grain shed. As for the farm truck, should be grain truck, which was found inside parts in the grain shed. As for Dylan's pickup truck, was still at Dylan's farm. Okay. According to court documents, yeah, obviously you didn't look at them good enough, did you? Says they found blood on one of the boots, as well as Brenner's DNA, according to the criminal complaint. Yeah, blood on one of the boots. It was more of like a blood splash mark or something. Brenner's DNA being his fingerprints when he must have picked them up after to dispose of. Deputies first identified him as a suspect over the summer after his arrest on firearm charges. Now he's facing a charge of aggravated murder, as well as abuse or desecration of a body, and is accused of concealing rounds remains. Yeah, well, concealing rounds remains is basically desecration, technically speaking, under that umbrella term. Candice Cooley, Round's mother told Fox News Digital at the time that Brenner was an acquaintance of her son, disputing the description in court filings which referred to him as a family friend. Maybe officials, authority, roughly assumed, because of hearing about Don Hately previous, being a neighbour and being a family friend of the Rounds Cooley, maybe they assumed that Brenner was too, which wasn't the case. So just kind of like a lack of accuracy. Dylan Rounds, a 19-year-old native who struck off on his own as a farmer in Utah, last spoke to family on May 28th, according to authorities. Yeah, it's brief, but yeah. Basically to the grandmother on the day, okay? 6:51 a.m. at the gate approaching the grain shed. That's what Dylan made a call to. And then at 6:57, 6:58 a.m. making the call to Brenner, which was unsuccessful. Okay, got to keep this consistency with repeating this stuff. In quotes, "I'm keeping it together as best as I can," she said at the time. Brenner's past criminal history includes malicious wounding, malicious shooting, and 3 prior convictions for being a felon in possession of a firearm. Court records show malicious shooting, malicious wounding. Maybe that's what it was worded as, what I was trying to say earlier in this article, where first it was seen as attempted murder or so, then dropped down to malicious wounding or malicious shooting, right? In quotes, "Defendant has no work history and is currently unemployed and has no verifiable residence," court documents state. The defendant was trespassing and squatting on property. Okay. Is this court documents to do with the recent court documents or past ones? Because I don't remember reading it quite like this in the recent court documents. Unless there was an overview one, which wasn't in public access, possibly. Defendant has no work history whatsoever. Maybe because Brenner was doing odd jobs, cash in hand type stuff over time, so it was never really recorded, maybe. Let me know your thoughts though. But if they're talking about Maryland and a work dispute, if they've acknowledged that Brenner was involved in some kind of work dispute back then technically he was working, right? Or did it never come to that? I mean, as for Brenner's age, approaching, I guess, age of retirement, I don't know how old Don Hately is. Candice Cooley said Don Hately was on the land in Lucin, but he wasn't squatting and he was retired. Okay, but as for Brenner, Candice Cooley said Brenner did receive, I think, disability allowance, and that was partial. That was mainly because of his leg ankle injury, which he sustained in the past, 2 different occasions, and said it bent back or bent all the way round or something. Yeah, bit of a wonky leg. Anything else? Actually, just one more thing. The bit where it says the defendant was trespassing and squatting on the property. Was he, though? It's been worded by Candice Cooley recently, saying that it was Don Hately that encouraged Brenner to come on over to settle down. Whereas other people in the past, more so viewers and other YouTubers, being honest, have suggested and said, maybe from the interviews they've conducted with Montello locals, that it was Ed Harshberger that wanted Brenner, that advised him or maybe pushed him to go into Lucin to get away from it. One or the other, right? As of recently, how it stands, Don Haley, Brenner's longtime friend, that encouraged him to come on over to Lucin. Squatting, trespassing is more so worded as squatting, right? Well, squatting is kind of like trespassing. What I should say is squatting or, being allowed there, given permission to stay there. Which one do you agree with? Leave your thoughts down below. Right. As part of the search for Dylan Rounds, investigators served several search warrants. 2 of them led to federal cases against men who had interacted with Rounds before his disappearance. Brenner and Chase Venstra. Yeah. Dylan Rounds grew up on a family farm and was excited to run his own when he went missing last year at age 19. When police announced the murder charge against Brenner last week, they also ruled out the potential involvement of Venstra or any other suspects in Rounds' disappearance. The evidence supports that James Brenner is the only suspect. Chief Deputy Cade Palmer, Box Elder County Sheriff's Office. Okay. According to a neighbour identified in court documents as D.H. Don Haley, at some point after Rounds' disappearance, Brenner asked him to conceal 3 powder guns and a .22 rifle. Yeah, we've seen that, we've read that. Don Haight giving the weapons in, being interviewed. Yeah. Dylan Rounds, 19-year-old Idaho native who went out on his own as a farm in Utah, last spoke to family May 28th. Yep. Quotes, when Dylan Rounds was not located early on in the search effort, the investigation focused on the possibility of Dylan being the victim of a crime, Palmer told Fox News Digital at the time. Well, the bit where it says when Dylan Rounds was not located early on, well, you could just simply say the boots kind of gave it away in a sense, in its own right, Maybe you're missing or not. You may just simply be out of sight, but on the land, but concealed. There were boots. If there's some evidence to suggest that Dylan has been hurt, that would be enough to say a victim of a crime, right? An Idaho native, Rounds went out on his own as a teenager to build up his own farm in Utah. According to Cooley, he had a passion for the work and spent no time playing video games or on social media like others his age. She said he did not use drugs. Okay, kind of abrupt to just throw that out there. But it's kind of incorrect, this. Bit of misinformation here, okay? He spent no time playing video games. Candice Cooley said herself that Dylan Rounds played Farming Simulator when he was about 11 years old. So technically, Dylan Rounds did play video games at some point. This is incorrect on screen. The bit about, not on social media, like others of his age, well, he was on social media. He's got his Facebook account. He's got a TikTok account. Come on, TikTok is a bit of a degen platform, or at least, some of the humans that go on TikTok are a bit of degens. Am I on TikTok? Yes. Well, that says a lot, doesn't it? Now, as for TikTok, it's to try spread additional awareness on the case of Dylan, or more so Kenny Veach, though because of TikTok, they're a bit corrupt, supposedly. Kind of. And they're also a bit dodgy when it comes to search results. TikTok kind of like censors you more than YouTube in a way. They're a bit of a pain in the arse, to be honest. And if you want to spread awareness, it just doesn't work. Whereas on YouTube, it does more. But only one can try at times, right? But put that aside, Dylan Rounds was on TikTok. He has an account. The account is still public. The account is still there of Dylan. And there's even 2 videos uploaded on there by Dylan from 2021. So he did have access to social media. He did have followers, and he was following some people as well. So once again, this is incorrect on screen. Anyway, she, I assume Candice Cooley, suspected foul play almost immediately when family members lost contact with him. Palmer had previously issued a blunt warning to anyone who may have been involved in Rounds' disappearance. In quotes, If somebody's laying low that was involved in this or knows something and they think they lay low long enough, we're just going to go away. That's not going to happen, he told Fox News Digital. We're going to keep at that until we get answers. Well, a bit of a contradiction there, considering that certain things could have been done early, but they weren't. Is this about it? The search for Round's remains is ongoing in a rural area dotted with abandoned mines and cave systems. We are hopeful they will be found, Palmer said. What? We are hopeful that they will be found. Who's they? Him. Him? Dylan? When you say they, it sounds like more than one person. Bit dodgy. Anyone with information? Okay, here's the phone number. Right. Remains is ongoing in a rural area dotted with abandoned mines and cave systems. Rural area. I don't know. It just sounds a bit weird the way they worded that. Just say desert terrain, desert environment, Lucin itself. That's what I mean. Why are people so vague at times when it comes to wording an event that happened or someone responsible, a person, a friend? And it's like, just include the person's name. You're allowed to. It'd be a lot easier and a lot clearer. And as for trucks, vehicles, appliances, use the words as they are. Not like vaguely, because then you start wondering, is it something else? God, this has not been a good day for news articles. Not at all.
Right, so that's the end of that part for the news article. I need to whip myself in a second just to cleanse myself of what did I just read, okay? Little mini meltdowns here and there, but not as whiny like some, as you know. But yeah, welcome if you have just joined. Okay, if you want to rewind to the beginning, feel free to do so or catch up on it later. We are transitioning on over now to the main, I guess, focus of this video title, right? The potential of if there's any bullet holes, any given signs on site which suggest that this is where it happened and this is what was used and here's proof of it. You know, that type of thing. Sure, you know, if police and, you know, some have done their own little crime scene, temporary, if you want to call it that, but not official, where they looked about, searched about, even the family as well, right? They may have detected or noted something, but it's not been said public, and there might be a reason for it, but there's no harm in checking ourselves. I know people put the argument across that, you know, if something of interest was still there, then they would have noticed it immediately to begin with, right? Yeah, I do understand that, but there's certain things that you can't take away. You get what I'm saying? And I'll just word it right now. If you've got a crime scene or a scene that's supposed to be a crime scene but not treated officially, like with the Dylan Rounds case, and if there was blood laying about, if there was a knife on the floor, if there was a pool of blood or vomit or whatever it may be, right? If you went there now, it's not there, is it? Of course, because it's been taken away. If you went to Dylan's farm expecting and anticipating to find his trailer and to go inside and have a nice little explore, you wouldn't. Not there. Well, obvious. Police have taken it away and they've not returned it. Obvious, because the case is still ongoing, right? But if you've got a bullet hole, you can't take a bullet hole with you to court or to for testing in that manner, right? You take a bullet hole with you, what, you cut a fucking square piece out of a shed? No. What they tend to do is probably take photographs of the bullet hole, maybe use like a swab test around the rim of the hole, you know, that just go right around the rim, collect any residue, any type of DNA or any, you know, anything like that. You think about it, if a bullet's been fired and it's gone through a human, might have collected some DNA of the person as well, right? Because it's gone inside of a person. And I guess most of the time, or sometimes exited out behind or from the side, wherever, whether it's ricocheted or not inside, and then may have gone into an object or gone through an object causing a bullet hole, right? So then you can check that bullet hole for like any residue, any DNA from where it came from and what it passed through to begin with, and maybe looking further afar to see if there's any other signs of it, right? Have we got to that point where we can confirm gun used, this one in particular, and that's where it happened? No. But we're still in the process of just trying to understand, okay? And with that video footage, as we saw, about Dylan cleaning a gun and blood on his arms, you could think that. Because you could also try and question, how did blood get on Brenner? You know, was it like blood splatter from like shooting Dylan up close? Possibly. Or was it more so Brenner carrying Dylan or dragging Dylan, and then the blood went all over him? Most likely. If it's on both arms, both sleeves, Brenner could have carried him like that, or over his shoulders, something like that. Okay? He's just trying to make sense of it to make it somewhat valid as to what we're going to look at in a second. But what I need to do just very quickly is whip myself. If you join in, if you're wondering what the hell's going on right now, it's okay, you don't need to question, it just needs to be done. So basically, is whip myself into shape very quickly, because that article was shit. Some of those bits of information was a bit shocking. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That really does sting, that, on this occasion. How do you do the back there? Oh. Yeah, boy. Whether it be because I've not done it for a long time, that was actually pretty sore, that. That did really sting. God, it'll leave a mark, isn't it? But yeah, now that's out the way, and whilst I feel the pain within me, oh God, I think it's now time to head on over to the photos, okay? So we're taking in mind the timestamps of where Dylan was present and where it ended. It was here, okay, within that 30-minute period, as we stated earlier on. So we don't really need to look at Dylan's farm as for if Dylan was taken out there. It seems strongly the case that it was here. It just depends exactly where, inside of the shed, outside of the shed. There is some supposed evidence that suggests inside of the shed, right? Well, I do want to acknowledge the shack lady in the past did talk about it and say that biological matter was found inside of the grain shed, and that's kind of like the reason for why that hole's there, is to probably collected that DNA, the evidence, in a sense. But how it's been worded with time has been a little bit messy. Biological matter, okay, open for interpretation. And at some point, shack lady said blood was found inside of the grain shed. Okay, it makes sense because, we think of how it played out, and with Brenner having blood on him and blood being found on one of Dylan's boots, yeah, it probably ties all in line. Though other people were talking about vomit and quoting the shack lady on that. And some people never updated their knowledge. So it's kind of been blood, vomit, blood. And just yesterday, shack lady said it was blood, not vomit. So I guess that clears that up. Though, I'll just be honest, from at least what I've heard of, like the official documents, all the news articles, Candice Cooley and Justin themselves, they've not mentioned anything about blood in grain shed. So don't know how this secret information came about, okay? But yeah. Anyway, also what I do want to highlight is, whilst we're looking at this photo, further on the left-hand side, further to the left-hand side where Brenner's trailer was originally at, nearby to that burning barrel, that barrel which we looked at last time, we don't need to look at that photo. There was a hole in that barrel, if you remember, and I did document it in my past video, so it's all there. And people debunked it on the spot back then, saying that there's a hole in the barrel because of, oxygen, it needs to breathe. If you're going to have a fire, you need the odd few holes in the barrel. And I can understand that because, like, bonfire night, when I've had a fire in the past, the bin that's been used had multiple holes in the sides. So, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Though, how was the hole created in the first place? Was it like that when bought, or did you have to do it yourself, DIY? If so, I wonder what Brenner used. A gun? A firearm? So technically it could still link on as a bullet hole, but done in the past for other reasons. Just saying. So we don't need to look too deep into that. Mainly looking at the grain shed and the surrounding area.
Some of these photos you may have seen before, others you may have not. This is from Salty Pancake's visit months ago, okay? Don't have the video footage. I don't know if the actual video is still on his channel or not, okay? You'd have to ask him. But, when we look down there, if I'm correct in saying Indiana, because I'm sure it was you that said it, that a backhoe was used to finish off doing work around the Grangeshed property. Is that what they mean, where it dips down there, and where you've got these mounds of dirt, such as there, and further to the right-hand side? Is that what was being done round then? Is that the case? Yeah? And why? Is it for drainage, so it doesn't flood? Let me know, okay? But can we see... Oh, what's going on there? Can we see any bullet holes here? At first glance, not really. It can give it away if you're in a dark room and then you see light shining through a hole. We may be able to see that, okay? From the outside, not much going on. A little bit of a mess, to be honest. You've got a little cart there with a wheel. Left-hand side, you've got a bookshelf, which is almost fallen over. And then flat on the ground, you've got a wheelbarrow and you've got a portaloo. You got a temporary toilet, which makes sense to be out there because do you have any other toilets? Not really. You can do it in the ground. Indiana said she's done that many times in the past. She's an expert shitting in holes. Okay. But yeah. The only other thing to acknowledge is that a window back there? Has that window been filled in the past? Or what? Is something propped up against it? I'm not quite sure, because it looks like it's blacked out. What's the point of that? Does anyone know? And also, you've got a door here, which is almost like falling off. What's the point of this door when you open it, you'll drop down into a ditch? What is the actual point of that? Does anyone know? Like, if it's been dug out around the grain shed, then I guess originally it was flat land so that if you open the door, you can actually walk out, but you can't anymore. So is that to deny access or exit point? Maybe. Grain shed itself looks in somewhat decent condition, like even looking at the roof as well, okay? Looks fairly well. When was the grain shed constructed? I don't know. Was it ever repaired or replaced ever since Dylan moved into Lucin? I don't know. Dylan wouldn't have a say, really, when he doesn't own this place, as those articles claimed earlier. But yeah. At least when I went on, Google Earth and I went back in time, going through the different years, at least in 2013, this was still here. And I think maybe going back to 2006, it was still there as well, but it got very blurry, the image, so it's kind of hard to see. But you could see like some kind of rectangle or shape, so, long-standing. But maybe it might have been renovated or repaired in between. But yeah, can't really see too much oddness, strangeness going on here. We'll move on to the next image. This is further to the left-hand side. Bit more further to the left, you would have had Brenner's trailer. You've got that little shed for the horse items and gear, which we can take a look at in a different video if you want to, just like a short one. You do have a barrel there, which is not the one what I was talking about earlier. The other barrel is further to the left-hand side off this screen, okay? But can't really see any holes there. I mean, it could be any object, even those pallets and crates of wood, if there's any holes in there, which, trying to look on the spot, can't quite see any holes, okay? Are holes going to be patched up? Well, if you were living on a property, you owned a house, and there was a drive-by shooting. Okay, I know I said about a drive-by whipping, but that's something else. There was a drive-by shooting. You had bullet holes in your windows. They're going to be repaired somehow, some way, aren't they? It's normal. But because of this area, with it being out in the open, they're not going to bother the same way, right? It's just a bullet hole. Oh well, right? So if there were any shots fired inside the grain shed, right, then there should be, well, providing the angle, the ballistics too, there should be some bullet hole or holes which remain because they can't be taken away and they're not likely to be filled in. Okay? Not much down the side. You could also take in mind there might be some holes, cracks and gaps because of age, wear and tear, right? You've always got to understand and acknowledge that. I can see like a little black dot there, but it doesn't look like a bullet hole to me. Okay. Let's move on. So we're inside of the grain shed. We have seen this image before, but we've got full screen right now. So I know we could use a magnifying glass, but I don't know. I think it could clutter up the screen, right? I want a full screen in my eyes. Whilst you're looking about yourself, here's a little tip. Look for white dots. If you see white dots, that's where light is coming from the outside shining in through the little holes inside. Do you know, like up there? Do you see how many holes are up there? That's not to say they're bullet holes, so let's not get too confused. We didn't have like a full-on shootout in here, no, and they're all in a line almost. So these are very unlikely to be bullet holes. There could be holes for ventilation, could be holes when screws or nails were put in, you know, or just holes because of wear and tear with time. So we've got to understand the difference between that, and we've also got to understand that you get big holes and small holes, and not all bullets cause big holes, right? I mean, the structure of the grain shed looks fairly secure. You got like the steel or the iron there, nuts and bolts and everything. You can see that door back there. Fucking damn. It looks like you can see a hinge. I think it's a hinge. I might be wrong, but it looks like a hinge. And then the other one up there, it looks busted. So what happened to that door? What went wrong there? Does anyone know? Was it kicked in? Was it like that for a long time? I don't know. But it's obstructed anyway by all the stuff dumped on the right-hand side anyway. So yeah, no noticeable bullet holes on this side of the room. Not at all. What about further down? Let's check. I mean, you got that big gap underneath down there. Do we have any holes there? Right, okay. So the holes that give it more away, potentially, are the stray holes. Okay, the ones that aren't uniformed or next to others, just randomly. Like, do you know that one there? That's a hole. There is another one near a turret above that bookshelf, but there's not as many nearby. And a hole is a fair size, but not too big either. So you could say that might be a bullet hole. Can it be proved? Well, maybe it already has been proved or already debunked, but I don't know because it's not been released publicly. You know what I'm saying? Any more? Oops. You got a hole up there. You got to take in mind the angles and the height of it. Do you think a bullet is going to ricochet all over the place crazily? Maybe with JFK, but not all the time. Okay, so you got to use common sense as well when looking at this type of stuff, right? Previous Tyler fella got a bit mixed up with a potential bullet hole, the back of Dylan's pickup truck, which was actually like a fob for where you insert a key or something. Yeah, but you know, there's no harm in just observing and looking. So 2 holes there, and then the one down here, which is probably the biggest hole in the shed from what I can see at least, the one that stands out the most. Just by your own opinions, do you think a bullet could cause a hole like this, or is it too big for a bullet? Okay, yeah, you might get some rifles, you get some rounds, 50 BMG and all that, but is Brenner going to have something like that? No. You got to take in mind as well the type of firearm that was used, right? Was it a handgun? What type of ammunition? The size of the bullet? and all the details around that. The gun experts that would question it. Rifle, probably not a shotgun. I mean, if it was a shotgun, well, the spread of it, I guess that's what you got to take in mind. I mean, a shotgun would cause more blood splatter, I guess. And if you're up close, you're probably going to get it on you too. Whereas a single shot, a single bullet, right, won't cause as much messiness. It can still very capable of taking someone out, but not as messy. Does that make sense to you? Hopefully. You still get single shot rifles, which can cause a lot of impact and all of that. Of course, yes. But, I'm just talking about on a lower end basis with what items one had at the time and what they're in possession of, right? Which isn't high-end military grade stuff, okay? But if people own firearms or in the chat right now, feel free to give your opinions and knowledge of what you know of and what is possible and what isn't. That's appreciated, okay? Do we have any more holes elsewhere? Well, let's move on to the next image. So, I had to get this screenshot from one of my previous videos. It was a little bit messy. That's why it's in that weird white banner thing. We're kind of frozen in time with the magnifying glass. So if you ask me to move that magnifying glass, I can't because this is a screenshot, okay? But as we're looking here, okay, just to point out, it looks like you got straw down there. That was for Brenner's horse in the past, which I wasn't aware of at the time in that past video, okay? You do have cans here, quite a few of them crushed up, most likely Brenner's, okay? You got that there, which you would rest a saddle upon, you'd put a saddle on top of it. And there is one saddle, which is on the right-hand side against the side of the grain shed, okay? Do we have anything else of interest, though? Do we have any holes? That's the question. We've got kind of like a hole there, but it's not exactly a clean-cut hole, right? I mean, this is the thing as well. Sometimes, depending what it's already hit, the bullet could break off, or a piece of shrapnel could, which causes the hole. So it might not be perfect. You use just to shoot at an object, and it was a correct velocity, power, and all that, and it could penetrate through. There's a higher chance that it'll create a nice hole. But if you shot at something, it went through, and you wanted it to penetrate something else behind, that hole may be a bit wonky, may not be as circular, right? I think someone should do a word count for how many times I say the word hole. It's very holy tonight. Do we have any more holes down here? No, we've just got gaps at the bottom. But what we do have, which supposedly is a bag of seeds or a bag of grain, whichever. The reason why this is somewhat important is because I'm not saying it is the case, but this could be the brand, the make, the seed, which came from Dylan's grain truck, which was originally bought was it 16th or the 19th of May? One of those 2 days, which is sometime before Dylan going missing, yeah. But remember when we did that little timeline or so? Well, actually, no, the timeline, what we did was more so looking at the 24th when Dylan supposedly went to Burley, Idaho to maybe buy some clothes, which isn't 100% confirmed. Then another person said that, no, it wasn't the 24th when Dylan bought seed. Dylan bought seed the 16th of May. But we don't know where from, and we don't know which make, but it was most likely in Idaho. And this bag of seed here, is that where it came from? Is that brand on the side of that seed the place where Dylan buys his stuff from normally? Does anyone know? Does anyone know what that bag says? Have you seen that brand before? Have you seen that logo? Can't quite make it out, to be honest. But there seems to be 2 lots of it. As for the rest, taken away most likely. It's just interesting how it's been left behind, Do we have anything else we can go off from? Not really, to be fair. I mean, you're not expecting to see lots of bullet holes, right? I think earlier there was a comment where someone was saying how, I wonder how many times did Brenner shoot Dylan? It could have been once or it could have been a couple of times, depending on how angry Brenner was and if he did a clean shot to begin with, right? Let's move on. Okay, so this is just like slightly more to the right. You got the hole there where supposedly the biological matter was found. I mean, the hole isn't big, but it's fairly deep, if that's where blood was found, unless the blood just seeped through to a certain depth, maybe. Oh, actually, is that bag a little bit clearer now? Oh, wait. Oh, hang on a minute. Wait, do you know that bag? That logo looks more like of a horse, like a horse's head. If that's of a horse's head, it's probably hay. And actually, yeah. Hold on. I can just about read that. That says hay. It's hay for the horse. It's not Dylan's seed. It's not Dylan's grain. It's got nothing to do with Dylan. This most likely is Brenner's hay for his horse at the time. Okay? So that clears that up. Good. Box casing of beer there from Brenner's cans. Hole there. Yeah, it's fairly deep. Though, once again, all I'll acknowledge is Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds have never, from my knowledge, out of all the interviews I've watched, never acknowledged this hole in the ground. And as well, you remember that time when Heavy D was doing the interview with Candice Cooley and Justin inside of the grain shed? Candice Cooley and Justin was sat right in front of it, right? The hole was behind them. And not once did they turn around or point to it. So what does that say? Is it that important in the case that it cannot be talked about? It does make you think, right? And yeah, if it's true that Shack Lady's saying that blood was found near that hole, or literally at that point where a hole was dug later to get a hold of that DNA evidence, then, that could be the spot where Dylan was shot, or the spot where Dylan fell down to the ground and then, I guess, bled out. You think about it. I mean, was there any footprints found? Any fine footprints found to suggest that there was marks going into the place? You know what I'm saying? Anyway, can't see any holes from here. The only other thing I'll acknowledge is that, do you know that bookshelf up there? Actually, no, do you know what? We'll do it now. Hold on a second. Let me just get back to the original photo. Will it show this one? Yeah. This photo here of the grain shed was taken months ago now. And you can kind of see, like, there's looks to be like a bullet hole in that shelf where it shows there. But that bookshelf, that like white object which is on the second to top shelf, or just underneath the top shelf, that white box on the bookshelf. Just look at it. There should be something next to it, as seen in Pancake's video, which was taken many months before Justin's photo. There's a black object next to that white object on the middle bookshelf. Though it's missing in this photo, middle bookshelf next to the white object. It's not there. So where did it go? How? Was it taken away? Did it drop to the ground? I don't know. It's never really been talked about. Do you understand what I'm saying? Bookshelf, middle shelf, white object upon it, nothing next to it. Many months beforehand, photo taken, same area, and there is a black object next to the white object, middle shelf. Interesting. But yeah, I just wanted to point that back out. So next image, this is of like the bottom of the grain shed in the corner, right hand corner of the grain shed. Okay. No like holes showing up, no holes. Looks like we've got a spray paint can in the back. We've actually got a chainsaw without the blade from the looks of it, or the chain itself. We've got like the motor and the handle. A vise there. Maybe a saw handle. Bits and bobs basically, and scrap too on the bottom of the floor. That's about it there. I can't really see any signs of damage or bullet holes, any ricochets. No, not from the looks of it. Of course, as we do go through this, let me know if you noticed anything, right? Here, is there anything? Not really, just more scrap on the ground and a lot of dirt as well. What's that down there? Why does that look a little bit reddish on the ground? It probably just a colour tone or something. Yeah, a little bit dodgy that. Cardboard box there. Not in the best conditions, but doesn't look that old. That completely dusted. Been there for some time. Just sat there, collected. And yeah, no real holes there. You wouldn't really expect to because it's lower down to the ground. And, you know, it depends. Was Dylan standing? Was he facing Brenner? Did he have his face back to him? You know, there's different conditions, right? Different scenarios. And, you know, depending on the angle, the position, the height, elevation and everything of where the person was standing, and if a shot was fired, where did the bullet go after? Is that it, the photos? Okay. That's all the photos I could get a hold of, okay, of the grain shed.
Right, so yeah, I'd say that's about it for now. Unless there's like some other locations that really need to be looked at for potential bullet holes, then maybe list below. But just give your own thoughts. Do you think a firearm was used in the murder of Dylan? And whose firearm do you think it was? And what type of gun was it? If that's also the case, did you notice any key timestamps within this video which may have showed bullet holes which I did not notice? If so, list that down below as well. If you do have any questions, additional points, any corrections, feel free to add that down below as well. Hopefully you managed to learn something new today, or at least remained somewhat understanding and not too confused when looking at those dodgy news articles and the wording of it. I know we could have looked at the farm and we could have looked at a different area, but I just wanted to really focus in on a spot where Dylan was at and the end spot for Dylan as well, based off those timestamps we've previously looked at. If you want more depth into them, I believe it's my last video I uploaded which looked at that visually and also just wording it, so make sure to check that video out. I said link down below in the pinned comment section. Okay. Also, in addition, from when I've looked at footage in the past, the people that did go into the grain sheds, such as Pancakes, I never heard him say, oh look, there's a bullet hole there, or oh, there's something like someone's been shot. So I've also listened to that with time as well, but it depends what you know of at that point, at that stage. You have heard that Dylan's been killed, but you don't exactly know where, and you don't exactly know how or by who. So, you know, you might not be directly looking at the smallest of details at that moment, though. You know what I'm saying? Though, in a contrast, when it came to the Kenny Veach case, when dealing with very limited material and resources in the early days, we were able to find a lot of depth and look really deep into some things that would have been glanced over by a majority of the human race. But that was because you were like scraping with what you had and trying to find something, at least one thing, no matter how small it is. Within the Dylan Rounds case, I don't think that's quite the same way. Okay, I don't know if Kenny's Cooley or Justin may have noticed anything odd in the grain shed, which still remains there now. Majority of the evidence and items would and have been taken away, though there's remnants that can't be removed or covered up, or there's no need to cover them up, such as bullet holes. They would remain, right? But let me know, whether it be you looking at other footage, other angles, other photos out there, did you notice anything whatsoever? Any holes? Any burn marks? you know, anything like that which could suggest that a gunshot was fired. And I'll just end it on one final point, which is kind of a question which probably may never be answered, but it's still worth, you know, leaving it at the end of this video, is if any gunshots were fired, did Ivor Zodowski at Lucin Airport hear anything? From what's been said previous, he wasn't in the area on that day. Over that weekend, he was elsewhere. Okay. What about any other people squatting, any farm handlers, any ranch owners? Did they hear any gunshots whatsoever? Because, you know, gunshots can travel, the sound of them, right? I guess if you got wind as well, not you actually having wind, but the weather, that can make sound travel too. And what about just simply Don Haley, one of the closest neighbours, right? Don Haley in his trailer, or nearby at least, because of that barbecue going on that day later on, probably him preparing for it. Did Don Haley hear any gunshots fired on the day, the 28th of May? Does anyone know? If anyone somehow comes across Don Haley, feel free to pass on that question. Did you hear any gunshots fired on that day? Because then that would probably reinforce whether or not that was the method. Okay? We'll probably hear more down the line. You probably will get more refined details and explanations eventually, but in the meantime, it's just trying to fill in the blanks and try and make sense of possibilities. Okay? So hopefully you enjoyed the video. It was of some use. We'll see what happens next. We'll see what video needs to be covered next. And yeah, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Goodbye and good night.